Yes, it's our Vote Leave, Vote Remain happy guide. OK, so what has the European Union ever done for us that the British government has not? Let's start with a trip to the zoo. The British government has made the running on our 6 species of deer. We can shoot them on land where we have permission with an approved calibre, and there's no licence to shoot them, just to own the gun. Tony Blair, presumably, he likes to see them suffer, so that's why he's stopped us from hunting them with more than 2 hounds. And that is a black mark against the British government. What has the EU said or done about deer? Almost nothing. Wild or feral boar are new to the UK and caused near panic in the government when they realised how many there are. There are no laws about wild boar in the UK. As far as David Cameron is concerned, you can kill one with a claw hammer, as long as you do it humanely. Shooters agree that a 270 or above is about right. And the EU, well, apart from some stuff about swine flu in the Baltics, almost nothing. They are not so hot on wolves. We don't have them here, but the Swedes have them. Here is Swedish hunter and commentator Jens Hoag, who does lots of telly and urges you in the UK to vote Brexit.
Here in Sweden, where I live, the European Union has closed down quite a bit of sustainable hunting due to their regulations. They interfere with every single detail of the hunt, and quite often we can agree on something locally on a Swedish government level, and quite soon thereafter be overruled by the EU. Take the wolf management, for instance. The Swedish Parliament agreed to a maximum number of wolves after long investigations with all the Swedish game biologists. And then after a process of a few years and a democratic decision in this country, the EU Commissioner for the Environment simply overruled that decision. And now the Greenies of Sweden are using this. So every time there's something they're not satisfied with in the game management, they just send a formal complaint to the EU and everything stops.
We have a pro-European here too. Dr. David Scallon is a policy officer at FACE, the Brussels-based organisation that represents us shooters, or hunters as he calls us, in Europe. He says the wolf question hasn't gone so well.
Both the Habitats Directive, which protects a number of mammal species, the legislation in general is fine. It stresses that there should be a focus on cultural and recreational and regional requirements, but there are differences in interpretation about particular parts of the directive. For example, in Sweden, the debate is about favourable conservation status, whether the wolves have reached this status or not.
Back in the UK, you can shoot foxes with a rifle or a shotgun, you can snare them, you can trap them, but if you hunt them with more than 2 dogs, you face 6 months in prison. Tony Blair again. Black mark. The EU? Nope, nothing. You can't even look at a badger in a funny way without arrest in the UK. It has its own act. The EU? Nope. Game birds, still covered mainly by the 1831 Game Act in Britain. Still nothing from Europe. If, like many states in the USA, they actually released pheasants for us, they might get some more votes. Pigeons! Got 'em! The 1979 Birds Directive, widely believed to have been written by a man who had never left his tower block in The Hague, made it illegal for anyone to shoot a migratory bird, including agricultural pest species. All governments had to implement it. We did it with a massive opt-out clause called the General Licences, which means you're not allowed to shoot any migratory bird apart from the ones which you are allowed to shoot, which the government tell you can shoot on an annual basis. The Tory government of the day, back in the 80s, told everyone not to worry, this was a fudge, but it would work. Fast forward 20 years and the Labour government of the day starts talking about removing the general licences. In the end, they just jiggled it about a bit, so we lost starlings and we gained parakeets. Tony Blair again. He hates parakeets. But should we be licensed at all? By anyone? Black marks again. To the British government and the EU. For Jens, however, it's not just wildlife. It's guns, because, says the EU, if you really want to stop the Paris terror attacks, you want to remove semi-auto tutus from rabbit shooters.
For the last few months, we've seen the EU Commission go after our guns. They want to subdue us to mental tests before we're allowed to have a gun license. They want to shorten the period of the licenses. They just want to make it miserable to be a hunter, from my point of view. We have 600,000 plus gun owners in Sweden and no crime with legal guns. And yet they now want to, the Commission now wants to take away all the semi-automatic rifles. The EU does not seem to like hunting and shooting at all, because we see no improvements. We only see more regulations, more difficult conditions for us. So from a pure hunting point of view, the EU really sucks.
Ah, says David, but look at the positives.
We're working hard to ensure that the EU Firearms Directive focuses on what it's supposed to do, dealing with the illegal trade of firearms and countering terrorism, and not necessarily targeting legitimate hunting and legitimate firearms ownership.
And then there is Malta. They are keen hunters and keen Europeans, but they feel victimised by the European Union over their turtle dove seasons. That's an example of a one-size-fits-all that doesn't fit Malta. And credit where it is due, the EU has not closed down hunting on Malta. So that's a plus, isn't it? As with many things in life, it comes down to status quo. There, you got it, didn't you? It was like being in the same room as them. Hunting, shooting, gun ownership, they are the status quo. We vote to remain in Europe and we double down on the risk. That's twice the amount of politicians to lobby, twice the amount of lobbyists to pay for. Bring back the splats on the map and let's halve those British black marks. There, remain in Europe. Still a winner.